welcome to another session of Google Payments Live. My name is Mihai Ionescu.
And I'm Pong Ying.
And today we have a special guest.
I'm Sudhir Jha, and I'm the PM on the risk team.
And the topic for today is an overview of the Google Payments risk engine and automatic fraud detection techniques. I know a lot of you had questions about canceled orders and Google's techniques for detecting fraud, so we thought it would be a great idea to bring in Sudhir for a panel discussion around those issues. So let's start throwing questions at Sudhir.
Yeah, and the risk team is the team that I ask for all of my... Whenever one of you guys asks us, we always defer to the risk team, so they should know pretty much everything about risk. And just to get it kicked off, so we have a risk engine, but can you tell us what problems the risk engine solves?
So Risk Engine is our fraud management solutions for Google products. This is a completely in-house built technology. And we use it to solve almost all the payment fraud problem, including account takeover, stolen instrument, DD abuse, any of those kind of thing, as well as some of the policy abuse problem on AdWords side mostly. So this is kind of like a comprehensive solution that we use for all sort of risk issues.
Got it. And can you get into how it works at all?
Sure. So it's a machine learning technology that we use, and we use it because we want it to be adaptive. As most of us know, fraudsters are very adaptive, and so we have to use a solution that also adapts very quickly to the new fraud patterns. And we use lots and lots of signals, hundreds of them, based on the transaction data that we collect. And then we try to sort of use that to learn the fraud patterns and try to then flag accounts that needs to be reviewed.
Got it. Can you get into any detail about which signals you specifically use, or provide more information for merchants to see what they should be doing on their side to improve?
It's hard for us to talk about signals because for any risk system to be really effective, we don't want our fraudsters to know the signals that we are actually using. But just sort of to tell you, we use sort of a lot of common signals that many risk systems use, like IP and things like that, but we also have some proprietary signals that we use in our system to make it much more effective.
Got it.
Sure.
So Sudhir, what products leverage the risk engine?
So pretty much all products at Google that either collect money or disperse money goes through the risk engine. So all paid products, that includes Google AdWords, it includes Google Wallet, Android, Enterprise. So any products where there's money being exchanged between us and the merchant or the consumer.
So lots of products.
Yes.
So how can we handle all these products? At what scale does the risk engine run?
So yeah, I mean, Google definitely has lots of transactions going on, and Risk Engine works also in real time, which means that we have to handle all these transactions in real time, which means that we are scaling to hundreds of transactions per second at times, and Risk Engine does very, very well with that.
Oh, so that's real time. So how fast is that, you said?
So
versus manual review.
So there is actually two component of the sort of risk checks. There is an automated portion which actually we do it in real time. So as the transactions are coming through, it goes through the risk system, and we actually check and score the transaction based on where the score comes in. We would sometimes send it for manual review. And the manual review, of course, is not real time. It takes its own time. But again, that also happens fairly rapidly so that we can actually come back with a decision in our system.
So I guess this goes into our next question. And I think this is one of the questions that a lot of developers are asking. Why are orders canceled? Why are some orders canceled? Or why are a lot of orders canceled?
Sure, we wish all orders could go through. But the thing is, almost any product that you have, there is going to be fraudsters who would want to sort of do something with it. There is a sort of a chargeback that comes if the fraudsters actually use something, and then the card owner or payment instrument owner reports it, and then they actually will process something which basically is called chargeback. Most associations, card associations, do not want the fraud to actually go at a very high level. And so they have a limit, either 1%, 2%, depending on where you are and which association you're dealing with. at which point the card association will start imposing fines. And if it happens for a very, very long time, they might even cancel your ability to accept payments using those cards. And so for us to not sort of get into that scenario and not have our developers get into that scenario, we have to decline some orders, we have to cancel some orders just to make sure that the fraud is under check.
Makes sense. Okay. So, I mean, what have you seen are some like causes of the fraud?
So, as I was mentioning before, so their frauds can be many different ways. We can have a stolen instrument fraud, which is sort of the normal fraud that happens across many merchants. We also have account takeover, so you can actually take over somebody's Google Wallet account and then start making payment using that. And so that is another fraud. One fraud that we see a lot in digital transactions on the mobile phone a lot is what we call a friendly or family fraud. And this is sort of a different kind of fraud where somebody in the household might be using the owner's payment instrument to make payments with or without the knowledge of the owner. And so what happens is that a lot of risk signals that we collect on the transaction look very similar because it's the same household, it's the same IP, same device in many cases. And so it might be slightly harder to catch, but that fraud actually happens quite a bit, particularly in the digital transactions, a lot in the in-app sort of ways as well.
Okay, and then it's not Google canceling orders all the time, right? There's like other third parties that are sometimes involved.
That's right. So everybody who is involved in the transaction, from the association, the banks that issue cards, or courier billing, where the couriers are involved, everybody in the ecosystem wants to keep the fraud under check, and everybody wants to participate in doing some control to make sure that the fraud actually doesn't go really high. And so banks often will do declines based on signals that they have, because they want to make sure that their cards are not being used illegally or without the knowledge of their customer. Same thing with the courier billing. They have their controls where they might have a per transaction limit, like you can't transact anything more than $10 using courier billing. Or they might have a limit on per month, like you can't spend more than $100 on that. And so a lot of those people also have the control, which therefore, if they decline the transaction, then Google can't process that at all. And so it's like we need to make sure that they first approve it, and then we can sort of do our risk check, and we can then approve that.
Got it. So every order has to pass through multiple levels of risk.
That's right. That's right. It's kind of a collaborative sort of way to reduce fraud in general. Yes.
Yeah. Can you talk about what other providers are doing, or other payment providers are doing at all, versus how we handle it?
Sure. So most payment providers have their sort of risk solution, and they do sort of very similar kind of thing. Sometimes the philosophy is different. What we have sort of done consistently is that we want to starve the fraudsters from getting the product they want. So we would want to make sure that they are not successful in going through with the order and getting the goods, either digital goods or even physical goods. And so we prefer to cancel the order up front rather than we allow the transaction to go through and then do refunds, which some of the providers, some of the merchants do, to also counteract the chargeback sort of limit. But in our philosophy, we think that if you let the fraudsters get the goods, then they'll keep trying because they are successful and they will just keep getting the benefit of the thing. And so we try to catch early and prevent the whole transaction from going through in the first place.
Looks like you have your work cut out for you.
Yes.
One last question, so I mean, we know that, well, we hear that merchants are encountering these kind of order cancellations all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Are we doing anything to improve that, to like reduce the amount of order cancellations in our system?
Yeah, sure. So we definitely are doing lots of things. So we, as I said before, we are constantly sort of looking for signals, looking for new data elements that we can use to sort of catch the fraud early. One of the things that we are doing for Friendly Fraud, which is something that is sort of fairly new to us because we didn't do a lot of digital in-app transactions before. What we're trying to do is sort of create a risk-based challenge. We are hoping that somebody in the household who is using the device without the knowledge of the owner of the device would not know the password for the transaction. And so we would actually ask for password in cases where our risk systems believe that this device is being used by somebody without permission of the owner. We kind of went that route because we want to keep the transaction sort of flowing smoothly in majority of the cases. Some folks have decided to ask for a password or some kind of authorization for every transaction on the mobile device. We have sort of taken the route that we want to make sure these transactions flow smoothly for majority of the cases where there doesn't seem to be any risky behavior, but in a very small set of transactions where we kind of suspect that there's something sort of different going on, we would want to prevent that by asking for password or other kind of challenges. And then if the person passes that, we will complete the transaction, otherwise we won't. And so what we're hoping is that today, since we don't have that challenge, we are canceling those orders because we suspect it and we cancel it. By allowing the user to complete the challenge and going through, we would let the legitimate sort of transactions go through and only prevent the ones that actually are really, really risky and are fraudulent. That also we're hoping will have impact in how many declines we get from banks and other places because our fraud overall is going to go down. And that will actually hopefully help. So we're doing multiple of those things, and we constantly, as I said, we constantly look for more and more ways to detect fraud and let the good customers go through.
So 2 more questions from me about this. First one, is this going to be on both Android and Google Wallet for digital goods, or is this going to be a specific platform that you're doing?
So yes, we are going to be doing for all transactions across all platform, but it is going to be sort of in experimental mode for a while. So we're going to start sometime in the next couple of weeks, and we'll start doing small experiments, making sure that we don't sort of mess up the sort of order processing and people's experience with the device. But this is going to be across all platforms. Yes.
Got it. So that was actually my second question about when are you guys going to launch it? So
yeah, so it is going to start, as I said, more for an experimental sort of way in the next few weeks, and then hopefully we'll launch soon after that.
Cool.
Cool. Looks like we're doing a better and better job.
Yeah.
Detecting fraud. So any
That
idea, any estimates on how much fraud we prevented, how much money we saved?
Well, we constantly kind of are looking for ways to sort of measure that. It's a little bit hard, and so what I'll give you sort of is the way that we look at what fraud system does for Google. There are really 3 different cost buckets we look at. We look at the fraud loss, which is sort of a number that is slightly easier to measure, because we want to make sure that the overall fraud loss and fraud in the system is low. The second bucket, which is slightly harder to measure, but we are actually extremely careful about that, is impact on the good customer. Because you can always sort of prevent fraud by killing all transactions, and all good customers will not go through the system as well. And so we are very sensitive to that, and we try to measure that as much as possible, which is we call it false positive in our system, and we try to reduce that overall, and we kind of balance that against the fraud loss. And then there is a third sort of cost, which is the entire operational cost for the risk system, both from the development of the technology point of view, but also in terms of the manual review that we talked about. And Google is, again, very, very concerned about not keep making that a very, very big cost, because not just the cost in terms of resources and money, but it's also cost in terms of delay in the overall system. And so we try to make as many automated decisions as we can and have very small operational cost to that. And so in combine all these sort of 3 different things, we need to minimize across all 3 costs. And I think, sort of conservatively, we have saved millions of dollars in the last few years.
Very nice. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure fraudsters and fraud schemes are getting more and more creative, forcing us to stay one step ahead.
Definitely, yeah.
What would be some of the most craziest frauds you've seen?
So let me tell you something that actually happened quite a while ago, because it's kind of already addressed across all the systems, so that we're not giving fraudsters new ideas. So what happens sometimes is what we call a merchant buyer collusion, where an app developer or a fraudster will develop an app, post it, sell it for $20, but then have him or his sort of staff buy it from their own, and then sort of make money that way. This happens quite a bit, but what really happened a couple of years ago is that these fraudsters figured out that they actually can walk into stores and use the demo devices. So there'll be phones sitting in the store, and they'll start sort of purchasing from there, their own app. And so and a lot of these phones were connected to the carrier billing, and so they were using carrier billing to pay and then collect the money and then walk away, and they'll keep going to different stores in the same city. Luckily now, not only that we have prevention for that, but also most stores do not allow you to purchase from those devices. So that actually makes.
This is giving me ideas.
Okay, let's not give more ideas.
Let's get on the bike and start driving.
Great. So, what's next on the horizon for the fraud and risk team?
So, risk team is always busy. I mean, we sort of have our work. Majority of work happens in sort of reactive mode, both in terms of new fraud patterns, people sort of trying new things and trying to figure out any loophole that we have in our system. And so that sort of makes us kind of work in that direction. Also, we or our developer partners start launching new products, and some of them are more risky than others. And so again, we kind of work in reactively to sort of control those fraud. But then also we have a lot of work in the proactive side, where we are constantly looking for new signals. We're trying to make our models better. We are trying to make our models learn faster, and all those things sort of happen. So we kind of keep balance of reactive and proactive, and there is no dearth of work to be done, always.
Great. Great. Well, thank you very much, Sudhir.
Thank you.
And everyone, I hope you enjoyed our panel discussion, and we're looking forward for more questions. You can submit them on the group or for our future sessions. And let's move on and take some of the submitted questions.
Yeah, can you stay with us?
Sure, I can hang out.
Cool, in case we get any questions about risk.
So let's see. Let's go to our moderator group and see what questions have been submitted.
I think the first, I have it up here, and I have the first one for you. It's probably for you. Is VAT automatically collected in EU countries?
So we've been getting this question quite a few times. Taxes are always an interesting topic. And the merchant is responsible to collect taxes. Either we're talking about Google Checkout or in-app payments. The case is the merchant is responsible for tax collection. But it's very easy to specify taxes for rates for various countries and various jurisdictions. You just go to the Merchant Center, and under the Settings tab, there is a tax setup link, which gives you a variety of choices on how to specify tax rates per country or per zip code. And once you do that, taxes are automatically collected and submitted by Google to the developer. And from that point on, it is your responsibility how to submit the taxes to the tax authorities.
And then the second question, what countries do you offer in-app payments? And what I've done is I've already pulled up the page where we list the countries. We'll list the international countries where we support in-app payments. And I'll just share that list with you right now. So it's under our Developers Guide FAQ. You can see it here. It's developers.google.com/in-app-payments/FAQ. And we're just describing where you can use this API, and something like 18 countries right now, from Australia down to United Kingdom. We don't list the US here, but we're going to add it. And it's pretty intuitive that Google in Wallet for Digital Goods supports the US.
So it's 18 countries now. We're looking to add more.
Yeah.
And of course, buyers, anyone who has a Google Wallet account can buy. And right now it's over 140 countries that are supported.
Yeah.
So virtually anyone can buy from merchant.
Very international. All right, let's get to the
Next
third question.
So this is somewhat on topic with today's fraud and risk discussion. The question is, orders from my wallet customers are failing with the following message: Google canceled this order, reason took too long to deliver. We usually see this mostly on Android merchants, I believe.
Mostly Android.
And usually I believe this occurs when the account has been flagged by the risk engine for manual review. So you'll continue to get this type of error until the manual review completes. Anything you can add, Sudhir?
So yes, on the digital transactions, because we cannot have the user wait for our manual decision to be made, we choose where we let the automated risk engine to make the decision, and then if it cannot make a decision and it decides to send for manual review, we cancel the order, and we do the manual review still, but that is used for future transactions and not for the current transaction, because we don't want the user to keep waiting for 5 to 10 hours or whatever it takes for manual review.
So I also talked to the Android team a little bit about this. So I'm not sure if it's directly related to this issue, but I've also heard that sometimes cellular networks can be flaky, or like cellular connection can be bad, and that can be another reason that this might occur, that this error message might occur. But
definitely, there are a lot of delays that can happen from different systems. Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it's more likely that developers see this when they test their own application, because they do it, with different accounts and.
Yeah, and also they're using some of the test systems, not the production systems. That's right.
Great.
Okay, so the next question that I see is, I implemented in-app payments in Sandbox. It works most of the time, but it fails randomly when I test it with different buyer accounts. The spinning circle can go on for more than 30 seconds before I get the "uh-oh, there was a problem" dialogue. You want to take this one, Mihai?
Sure. So this can happen in the Sandbox, especially because you're trying different variations of your app. You try to cover all the test cases, and you have various ways to debug this. One would be the failure callback. On the client side, you have error codes. You look at the error type field in the returned JSON, and that will tell you what happened. Gives you an idea about the problem. In this case, where it says it takes more than 30 seconds, most likely the error type you'll get is internal server error, which means something bad happened on the wallet servers. You can wait a few minutes, try with a different buyer account. Most likely the order will go through and you can continue testing. If it doesn't work, again, try switching to a different buyer account. If it still fails, send us a message on the group. We'll try to figure out what happens.
Yeah, I just want to add that this only occurs in Sandbox, that in production it doesn't really, it rarely occurs if ever. And that we are actually working, we are aware of the problem of the inconsistency in Sandbox in terms of timeouts and errors, and we are actively working. Well, not us, but the engineering team is actively working on fixing these issues.
Yeah. Thanks for the question.
The next one is there a way for the seller to get email notifications when an order is received or canceled?
Let me take this one.
Sure.
So you are getting a notification, just not an email notification. For successful orders, you get 2 notifications, one on the server side and one on the client side. And for canceled orders, you are notified on the client side with the failure handler. Just as I mentioned earlier, you can look at the error code, error type code, for an idea of what happens. We've been thinking about adding email notifications. We may do that. They tend to be spammy, but we can offer it as an option for merchants who have a low volume of orders. If you have several hundreds of orders per day, then you don't want to get that many emails.
I think they would.
You will turn it off immediately.
Even if you specified your Gmail account to receive these emails, that would probably start getting marked as spam, and then we would just spam block ourselves or something like that. I don't even know.
So the best way to handle it is through the failure handlers in case of cancellations, or the server side and success handler in case of success.
Cool.
Questions?
Let's get to the next question. So why doesn't Google put some pressure on AT&T, Verizon, and other carriers to allow Wallet on the Galaxy S3? It's really frustrating to not have access to such awesome technology because of political BS. This is a good question. And so what we typically deal with are API-related products. So we don't have a lot of insight into Wallet. But I went to go ask the Wallet team anyway because I saw this question the other day. And their response was that we actually do have a lot of ties to carriers because of Android. And the powers that be are working with the carriers to find a mutually beneficial agreement for Wallet. Other than that, they weren't willing to share any additional information with me. So this is what I have. I think in the future, in a session, a Google Payments Live session in the future, we'll bring on somebody from the Wallet team so that we can have a deeper Q&A session about the future of Wallet, its functionality, and its features.
Great. Yeah. So we took the question.
Cool. We'll go with the next one.
Next one is a question about availability, I believe in-app payments availability in other countries for sellers. And this is a question.
There's actually a new one here.
Oh, you have a new? Okay,
Yeah.
let me answer this one and I'll move on to the next one.
Okay.
A question from Carlos in Madrid. And the good news is in-app payments is available in Spain. Woohoo! So Carlos is covered. We showed you the list earlier. It's about 18 countries that we offer right now. And we plan to support new countries. There are slight problems that different countries have different rules and regulations for monetary transactions, and that slows things a little bit. And as we go through them and figure out all the legal requirements, you will see newer countries being added to the list.
Cool.
Do you say there's a new
So,
question?
yeah, the new question is, hi, is basic authentication still required for receiving XML notifications? In other words, do I still need to use IIS basic authentication module? This is a checkout question. So API version 2.5, I believe, is the basic API. And in this case, instead of us send you a notification directly, or a full notification directly, we send a notification to your server indicating to you that we have a notification awaiting your pull. So then you have to pull the checkout servers to pull the actual notification. And because you're requesting from checkout, we're actually using the checkout SSL certificate to secure the transaction. So in this case, no, you do not need to use basic authentication to receive XML notifications.
Perfect. One more question. This is also checkout related, I believe.
Yeah.
And the question is, it seems difficult to understand docs and such, and programming examples are difficult to understand. Is there a plan to make them more concise? So the question doesn't specify what it is from, but I know it's related to the Google Checkout APIs. I got a little bit more context from the developer. And in this case, it relates to level 2 integration of Checkout APIs, that is notification and order APIs. Level 2 integrations in Checkout can be quite complex, and it's okay if you don't understand them at the beginning and you go to a little bit of trial and error. I suggest as you read the documentation, also play with the sample library code, which we offer in the documentation for various platforms, and try to understand what's going on there. Another good resource for help is the integration forums, the Checkout integration forums, and you can access them from the documentation page as well. We have links there. And if everything fails, send us a question again.
Cool. I think there's one more question that
we got one more. We got so many live questions.
keep asking them. We'll be here all day. So the next one is, are there any plans to have Google Checkout be more usable on a mobile device from a user's perspective? For example, on an Android device, when checking out, the user input is difficult. It appears that there's no mobile-specific CSS or HTML. This is a good question. So previously, we did have a mobile-specific UI. There are a few bugs with this UI. Actually, there are a few really bad bugs. Like, regardless of whichever shipping method you chose, it would only be only the first shipping method would be used. So to fix this, what we're working on, or what we worked on, was changing the mobile buy flow back to desktop buy flow, and then trying to update the CSS. I don't have any more specific details about the next steps of the mobile buy flow from the Eng team yet. But what we can do is we can reach out to the Eng team for checkout and find out more information about the future of it.
Great. Any more questions?
I think that is it.
That is it. Okay. We're almost out of time. So thank you everyone for watching. Remember, you can watch the video on YouTube if you've been late to this live session. The video is available on YouTube.
Yep.
Every recording, it's available there for your viewing. And we're looking forward to see you again in a couple of weeks. Send us more questions.
And one last thing before we go, if you want to do something like this, if you want to join our team, right, and help share your knowledge with external developers, we're actively hiring right now. And to find the job list posting, go to developers.google.com/jobs. And with that, I think that's everything.
thank you, Sudhir, again
Thank
for
you.
participating in our
Thank-
panel discussion.
thanks
We
for
hope
inviting.
this was helpful, and looking forward to see you again in 2 weeks.
Yep.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.